Zach, take it away with this final one that was on Netflix. We had a lot of recommendations for this one, but I've been seeing a split. Some people love this movie. They think this is such an ingenious take on this, I don't even know, meta story is how some people are taking it,
Yeah.
especially when you get into the Jamie Foxx of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of dealing with cloning or worlds within worlds. I kind of saw this as a sorry to bother you type of a story, but I'm curious your take, because some people love it. Some people despise this. They find this
Yeah.
fake. They think it is propaganda almost. Where do you fall on the Netflix movie, They Cloned Tyrone?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Sorry to Bother You, a movie that I really like and have recommended a lot on the podcast
Love as
because
well.
I thought about that film, but I also thought about another film that I know you're a big fan of that we recommended on the podcast before, Under the Silver Lake, a lot while watching this movie, because both of
Okay.
those films deal heavily with this sort of idea of regular person getting thrown into like societal conspiratorial rabbit hole, you know, having a whole like
Interesting.
underworld that controls things revealed to them and having them feel sort of like they're delusional along the path. And those films are all getting at that sort of idea in somewhat different ways. Sorry to Bother You being probably the most satirical and ridiculous and comedic and to my mind, the most fun of them. This one feels maybe a little between Sorry to Bother You and another movie that we actually mentioned earlier on this podcast, Justin Simeon's Hair, in that it's really trying to comment specifically on things that are specific to Black culture and the way that Black people feel about how they've been perhaps manipulated or boxed in by the world around them, and turn it into this kind of like fun sci-fi conspiracy thriller romp. I think it's really, really benefited by having this trio of great performers at the center between John Boyega, who I think gets to show a different side of himself than normal, one that's a little bit more reserved and more inward, similar to what was the movie that had the title change from Sundance that we liked that was similar to John Q. Was it like 825 or something like that?
Yeah, and then they called it like Broken. It was something with a B after the fact.
Yeah, he's sort of more in that kind of like subdued mode here in They Cloned Tyrone, and he lets Jamie Foxx as this like wildly pimp character, and Teyonah Parris, who one of my favorite actresses, underrated actresses,
She's really good.
having a lot of fun in this role as well. So like in the moments where we really get to vibe with all of them, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't know if I feel like all the pieces add up in a way that makes me feel like it's making this really profound statement the way that Sorry to Bother You did. I think it's more just like a fun riff on the idea of government control and stuff like that. But I enjoyed my experience with it. I thought it was extremely creative.
I wanted to like it a little bit more. I feel like young Art would have watched this movie and been like, bro, there are some aspects to it. You know, I'm looking at this poster right here and it says, beware cheap imitations.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole movie is shot. You could even see some of it on the poster here. To look like it's shot on film, they do this thing where the circle, the burnt circle comes out, which is in film supposed to mean that they're changing the film reel.
Yeah, the cigarette burn.
The whole movie's digital.
Yeah.
They just threw some scratch on there. It looks great. There are some moments where I'm like, ooh, wow, y'all are replicating it. But you can tell it's replicating it.
It also doesn't look like film. Yeah.
It doesn't look like film. It looks like a really good filter.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of stylistic choices where, again, is it being the imitation? Is that the commentary that they are the imitation? I don't hate it, but it had me kind of looking at it like it already knows what the metaphor is. Mm-hmm. And instead of doing something bonkers like Sorry to Bother You does, where it takes these twists and turns of really inverting it on its head, here it just like, I felt the inversions or the twists were very heavy-handed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it doesn't leave a lot of subtext. It makes it all the text of the movie, which, you know, can be fun, but it's also less of a thinker and less something where you are left wondering what they mean, because you kind of, it kind of is all already there.
Yeah. And again, I want to watch it again. I want to break it down a bit more. But that's how it was left the first time. Like, is there anything else for me to go back to?
Yeah.
But I'll put it to you simply. It feels like a Sunday message. This is what they want in the rap, and music is used to go up against you, and you're only at the liquor store for this, and the lottos are fake. It's just to get you in the cycle. And I do agree with a lot of that, but I felt the way it was presented here with the certain characters who reveal it, I don't know. I wanted it to be a bit more. That's
Yeah.
it. That's all I could say.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
took it as
Like, I don't want to diss it, but
Yeah, I mean, I took it as more of like a satirical commentary on that kind of idea rather than necessarily like just being that idea. That it's like everything that every crazy rumor that you've heard is true. Now what? Kind of. Which like is interesting, but again, like there's not necessarily like as much to dive into in that. I think for me
yeah.
the enjoyment of the movie was just the journey and not really like the sitting with it as
On
much.
the
I
characters.
thought it was yeah, it was I thought it was fun. You know, I don't necessarily think that it's like one of these movies that I'm going to find myself revisiting much or like thinking back to that much, but I enjoyed actually watching it.
What it reminds me a lot of is, do you remember Gunpowder Milkshake or Milkshake Gunpowder, whatever it was? Another
Yeah.
movie from Netflix that was looking to make like this very colorful cult status type of movie.
Mhm.
I think it's gonna end up where that movie ended up. like me mentioning it right now is probably the first time people have remembered that movie, if they even remember that movie. I think
Right.
because of the Netflix model and it not getting a release fully, it had like some theatrical showings. I don't know how much it's going to build up to be the cult classic that they want it to be, but I'm curious to revisit in the future. I'm curious to see what this director, obviously the entire team, is going to be doing in the future as well. I just wanted
Yeah.
it to hit a little bit more, and I would recommend something like Sorry to Bother You, or as Zach said, the White Tyrone right here in Under the Silver Lake. So it's out on Netflix. I don't not recommend it. But I was like really hyped up for this movie, and I thought it was going to be like very, very clever. And if it was something like Under the Silver Lake, excuse me, which is a movie that every time we see it, I find something new, oh, then I would love it. But I feel like it's once you put the puzzle piece together, you put the puzzle piece together. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if this one ends up being one that people champion because I think there are their defenders around it.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we might talk about it more in the future with spoilers, with such. But let us know your thoughts on.
It definitely also got a bit unlucky coming out on Barbenheimer week. Definitely crowded out
Yeah.
a lot of the noise around the movie.
That does not help when everybody's actually not at home and everyone wants to leave. Yeah, that
Yep.
doesn't help either. But hey, it's a really good looking movie, good performances all around from everybody there. And we'll see where they take it in the future.
Yeah.
They clone Tyrone too.